Welcome to the Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 work session meeting of the Penfield Town Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Barry.
Here.
Lee. Here. Leanhouse.
Here.
Ockenden is absent. Techlish.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Board, we have before us the February 26 minutes here. Any discussion? Motion to move them?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay.
Barry.
Aye.
Lee. Aye. Leanhouse.
Aye.
Techlish.
Aye.
All aye.
Okay, great.
Catching up.
Got a few action items. We'll start with the requested relief, Chapter 180 sewers. Carrie and Alex are going to discuss this.
I'm going to wait for our sewer foreman to join the table, but I can give a little bit of a quick background. The issue or request for relief came up from application through the building department associated with a change in occupancy in Baytown Plaza. It's a small new Thai restaurant, and their plumbing engineer prepared an analysis based on what their grease trap requirements would be under the New York State Uniform Code, submitted that information to the building department, and then we realized that there's a discrepancy because our town code in the sewer, Chapter 180, specifies a minimum size external grease trap underground, or external, it can be underground or it can be a above ground mounted facility of 1,000 gallons. In the instance of this application at the town building department, the New York State Uniform Code says the sizing based on their size of kitchen and need would be about 70 gallons or 75 gallons. So there's a big discrepancy in what Uniform Code says is needed, and then our minimum standard that's built into the town code is 1,000. So the town board serves as the Board of Commissioners for the sewer district and sewer and all infrastructure. So there is a letter in the drop for tonight's meeting asking if the town board would consider granting a waiver or relief from this provision with the input of the sewer foreman. And so that's why Alex is here to sort of walk through. And then as a bigger picture beyond this, as town staff from DPW, the building department, engineering, and starting to go through this section of the code in more detail and realizing that there's an opportunity for enhancement for this section of the town code. And we're hoping we could get some permission to identify proposed amendments to this chapter. There's a small working group of those folks from those departments that we're going to present a proposed local law in the coming months to help clarify regulations, take design criteria and move them into the town's design and construction specification, because that's really where they belong. This way, as design requirements change, as the New York State Uniform Code changes, as best practices change, it's just a better process. And I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to look at Alex now and see if he'd like to chime in.
Yeah, I guess the concern that I had with this is it is prohibitive. It kind of limits business in the town. I'm not sure exactly why this was written that way. But I guess I didn't really have a leg to stand on. I just have to enforce it. And that was something that I was getting a lot of pushback from and had some concerns about. So the Unified Plumbing Code is less prohibitive than what Carrie and I had talked about, and what we're going to work on is making a sewer, use law or design specification that includes the grease traps, and then I think we're going to take a similar stance to stormwater treatment, and just add, this is the minimum requirement that New York State requires for the Uniform Plumbing Code, and we're going to ask that they add 20% or 15% overage on that, so that they're sized larger than the minimum requirement. So that's pretty much all I really had. If you had any questions on that, I know there's a few businesses that we've run into that we've had issues with. I did reach out to both of those.
There may be other businesses, we might be coming back
So
to
I
the
was going
board.
to ask, is it other businesses?
There may be others,
Industry.
there might be some pre-existing non-conforming businesses that didn't have any grease trap, and so now the town can require, can require and should require them. So wanting to make sure that this 1,000 gallon, in some cases, there are some businesses that will exceed that under the New York State Plumbing
What would be an
Code.
example of that?
McDonald's.
So,
So-
Five Guys currently has a 1,200 gallon grease trap, the one on 250, and
So any place that has a heavy fryer use is going to exceed that. The Popeyes of the world, the Kentucky Fried Chickens, any,
Magnet down,
I'm sorry?
the Magnet down in,
Perhaps, yeah, so I
They fry a
think,
lot of chicken.
yeah, so I think the idea was to look at potentially mirroring the town's approach to stormwater management. It's New York State standard plus 20%, and it helps to ensure that people aren't putting in the smallest minimum.
Right.
I think the other thing, just important to say in talking with Alex, is also just clarifying the enforcement protocol and ensuring that the town has the ability to make sure that these are being, reported and inspected properly, that they're being maintained. Because once you put a grease trap in, that's not the end of time. You have to empty it, you have to make sure.
Forget it.
It's not set it and forget it. It is the opposite, actually. So, because ultimately, it's a mechanism to protect the town's sewer system from getting inundated with, grease and fat and things that can really bog down a pump station.
yes. So, and again, like Carrie said, they have to be maintained, and depending on the usage, would increase the frequency of the maintenance or decrease it, depending on how much use they see. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all,
Right.
Every 2 months or every 3 months, every 6 months. It's all based on usage.
Yeah.
So, again, we're a little bit more active with our grease trap inspections currently, and this is something that we ran into, and we're seeing that it needs to be kind of changed.
Alex, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So, visited the site last week, and there's Old Pueblo Grill, 3 doors down of the proposed site. Do you know, if you don't, do you know how large their grease trap is?
I do not. I have not done a site visit there as of yet. That building, I believe, was a pre-existing restaurant prior to.
Correct.
So currently, right now, the sewer department is doing grease trap inspections throughout the town. We started in the Baytown area. The issues that we were seeing at Empire 1 pump station and at Empire 2 pump station facilitated us kind of going through and doing site visits at all of the local businesses in those areas. We haven't gotten that far yet. And then we also saw the proposal for that other restaurant in Baytown. So that then kind of set off some bells and kind of said,
Okay.
what's going on here?
Before I ask my second question, Pete, so just so I understand, wouldn't this kind of stuff be reviewed as part of any site proposal
so that was
at the
the
time of approval?
So it would be reviewed by the building department. And so a question I was going to ask Carrie is if we want to make sure if we're going to make this change, that we find a way, because maybe if you're changing from one restaurant use to another restaurant use, we want to make sure that we capture any change of use where they would need to have the, greater volume in the grease trap, which, I mean, it depends on whether or not they need a building permit.
So, I mean,
And we may be able to capture it with sometimes how we have a change of use requires some, even if it changes owner or change of use. we just have to
generally speaking,
capture
when
that.
one restaurant is going out and another one's coming in, if they're using the existing kitchen equipment, then a building permit might not be needed per se.
Okay.
However, if they're making any change to the kitchen, that's likely a result of requiring a building permit. So that would be the place or the trigger to know that the grease trap that's there is sized properly for the intended use.
Well,
Okay.
it's like, if this particular application is a Thai restaurant.
Yes.
And they got a 70-gallon grease trap, we want to make sure that if they move out and a burger joint goes in there that needs 1,000-gallon, we capture that
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
I think we would still be doing our yearly
Oh, okay.
inspections.
Yes.
Which
and
is
we-
part of the problem, is we haven't
and-
been doing that until recently.
Yes, so we would still be, my goal is to still be doing those, or to be initiating doing those yearly inspections and site visits, so that if there was a restaurant that was repurposed, like a salad place
Yeah.
going to a fried chicken place or whatever, that if they, because you can have the minimum requirement, but you're going to be maintaining it.
Yeah,
If you're
more
doing a
frequently.
significant, you're going to have to maintenance it more frequently. So, the salad place may have done it once every 8 months or twice, a year, whatever. If you're making hamburgers and french fries, you might be cleaning it out, once a month, weekly, whatever it is. My thought process and my goal is to make sure that we're holding people that are using the sewer accountable and making sure that there's not a burden to taxpayers and the town
Yeah.
to remedy these issues that we're seeing.
Okay.
So
I
if- oh,
I
go
was
ahead,
just going
Ted.
to say,
No,
I've learned a lot, especially from you, Alex, on the whole sewer and how it works, and getting a tour of the pump station by K2 was very interesting to me. But we were talking about why maybe this was put in the code in the first place, and it could have been a catch-all. The worry that, okay, if we mandate a 1,200 gallon, then if there's a change of the use, then maybe that'll suffice, but that's probably not the way to go. It really affects people that don't need a 1,200,
Right.
which is expensive.
Yeah.
Which I think this restaurant was going to not go in if they
Correct.
don't get relief.
Okay, so that was my next question. Is this the last action item for them?
Yes.
It's the last hurdle, okay. And then, is there any space at that location? Because again, that proposed site is much smaller than the corner grill. Is there space to accommodate a 1,000-gallon?
At the Thai restaurant,
Yes.
outside, there might potentially be. I'm not sure exactly where they would put that in.
So inside the kitchen or inside the site? The answer is no, is that what you're?
So a 1,000-gallon grease trap is 5 foot by 8 foot.
Right. So there's two types of
So-
grease traps. Right now, our code specifies it has to be an external grease trap of 1,000.
Okay, so
So there's some that are
Okay.
built into under sinks and under catch basins. They're tanks that are under sinks and under drains. So they're capturing inside the building. And then those are, need to be collected or maintained by an external company that specializes in collecting that material. And so right now, our code doesn't even really allow you that provision of having it inside the building, the way the code's written.
It just says 1,000-gallon external grease trap with a H20 rated lid, so highway use lid, so you can drive vehicles over top of it.
Okay, so they'd have to bury it, right?
The tank is buried and it has manholes that would access
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So similar
Okay.
to what they have at like Five Guys so
Okay.
it is a significant cost.
Okay.
And
so
cost
base-
prohibitive in this instance.
Yes.
but- Okay.
And didn't they make, like, in Monroe County, they made them like more, after the incident where somebody fell in a grease trap, they made them more, I think,
It was a child that fell into
Yes.
that one,
Yeah,
so I
that's where
remember.
the H20 rated
Yeah,
lids and
okay.
covers, because the cover itself weighs 108 pounds, so a child's not going to be able, and you need a special tool to remove it. So
Yep.
with children,
Yeah.
most children aren't going to be able to manipulate a tool that's going to lift a 108-pound.
Most adults wouldn't be able to.
All right, based on the explanation, I don't have any issues with the one-time variance, and I'd be supportive of building, sewer, and Carrie to work together to update or modify proposed changes to the local law.
Thank you.
And Pete, just from a
Hold
procedural
on.
question?
We're going to need, we
Oh,
need
sorry.
input from the others.
I concur. I have no issue with this.
Okay. Jeff, you okay as well?
Yeah, Yep.
All right, what do you need from us, Alex, then tonight?
I was actually going to ask Pete, do you think a roll call vote on granting waiver is sufficient and just to be recording in the minutes?
I think that would be sufficient,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Vote,
Okay.
Barry,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Leanhouse.
Aye.
Techlish.
Aye.
All aye.
Great,
And you can
thanks,
track
Alex.
that out and make
Yes.
it on the file.
Just one thing before I'm done here. There's another business that's having a similar issue. And to bring them into that compliance would essentially.
I see what you did there, Alex. Get the first one and sneak the second one in. I see what you did
That's
there.
right.
What's the second business, please? We need
South-
some specifics.
South Bay Restaurant, and it's at 1300 Empire Boulevard.
So it's across the Empire on the other side?
Yes.
On the
for-
Bayside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
West.
I know where, yep.
The gentleman that owns that restaurant, his grease trap is in non-compliant, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. And to bring it into compliance, the provisions here of the sewer use law, it was requiring him to put in the 1,000-gallon. So I talked to his contractor. They did the calculations, and they're recommending that it be a 200-gallon grease trap. I think that if we came back and said that they put in a 250-gallon or a 275-gallon, I would be pleased with that, 'cause I think that would be sufficient to cover the needs of that restaurant and protect our sewers with proper maintenance. I just thought I would mention that and see if that would be something that we could expedite for him, because they've been in violation for a while, and I don't want it to go to fines and issues and problems with the business in the town of Penfield.
Have
So-
they otherwise been in compliance with cleaning, aside from the size?
So that's the records that I've received were not for proper cleaning. I think they're going to be a little bit more, because the facility that they have is deficient, and it's not really doing anything. I don't think there's anything to properly clean. It's kind of,
Oh, so right now, they have,
there's things that are illegally connected to the sewer, and then the shower trap that they have is undersized and not functioning properly.
So I don't think these two are similarly situated. I
Okay.
would ask for this one, similar to how we did the review for this one, that the tenant or the property owner submit a letter, a formal request.
Sure.
Along with their plumbing engineer and their plan review, so that we can kind of see, and then I think that'll take care of Pete, some of the compliance, because you're not selling that case at all, Alex, and I think they're going to have to provide some supporting evidence as to why a variance would be justifiable in that case.
I don't think he was trying to sell.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
absolutely
no,
not.
I know you're a neutral party in this, but I don't think you're doing them any favors right now.
Again, it was, the amount of issues that we've had at Empire One Pump Station because of this business
Yeah.
keeps me up at night and gives me hypertension, so
Oh, God.
just, all joking aside.
so you would, a 250 or 275-gallon tank would be beneficial? at
It would be
the end of the day.
beneficial and would
But-
help limit
But they
some of
still
our
have some
problems.
issues that they,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I'm okay to expedite, because I don't want our sewers backed up at their,
No, I understand that. So again, I was just implying that right now, currently, there's no provisions for grease intercepting at this business. And they were on the, we were pushing for the 1,000-gallon, and he was like, I can't afford that, we're going to have to shut down. And I said,
Yep.
okay, well, let
Yep.
me bring it up to the town board and see if we can.
Right. And if they follow that same
I
process.
mean, I get
Yeah,
it.
which is
I get
fine.
it.
So they need to submit a letter from their plumbing engineer.
If they're causing problems, is there a provision in our code to kind of require them to pay for, like I imagine, do we have to, we must have to send guys out there extra overtime, or hire somebody, a roto-rooter or something?
Maybe we can take that offline.
My one thought is, based on where we're going with changing, whether we change the code, that will be part of it. Because the one thing I learned, if I didn't already say it, the bigger the tank, the less maintenance potentially, but we need to have provisions on making sure people are
Yeah.
maintaining them and, getting the information for you, so you don't have to inspect every restaurant, and we sort of touched on that, but I think that's part of it, part of going through this process with the group.
Sure.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And can we move our held items, Steve Schicker, up forward to get him out of here if he can? Well,
That makes me feel good. Everybody wants me out.
Well, this beautiful night, I'll let you and Carrie
How's everyone doing
take
tonight?
the lead. Great.
So at the last work session, I think we reviewed that there were no public comments received. However, there might have been some outstanding final wordsmithing needed, and so it was tabled at the last meeting so it could come back to this work session, make sure that all final changes in language have been identified so that the final version of the proposed local law can be circulated to the town board members via email in accordance with the local law adoption process that's outlined in New York State town law. And so there are, one clarification I'll point out that is not reflected in the most current version is clarifying that public buildings would be clarified to put in parentheses
Town-owned public
town-owned
buildings.
buildings, because public buildings can be
Vague.
interpreted more broadly. Steve also identified additional sentence addition, I believe, in another section that we were going to
So for
modify.
For I,
Yeah.
which is for the private businesses. And I think, if I may, that there's some confusion that Carrie and I have been kind of going back and forth on, which is we're not looking for people entering buildings with dogs. We're not looking to stop people. We're not looking to be intrusive. It is when the merchant or business owner calls us, or a deputy calls for assist. Most recently, it was Wegmans. Called us because a woman went in there with 2 Chihuahuas and a Pomeranian, and they do allow dogs, but only service dogs, and it's posted on the front of the building. She had them in her cart. The dogs were acting up, barking, making a nuisance. She put them on the floor. The dogs were jumping, barking, going around, making a mess on the floor. Sheriff's deputies were called. They called me. She claimed that they were service dogs. They were not service dogs. After some coaxing, they were emotional support dogs. That could get her in a lot of trouble by saying that they are, service dogs. And it happens at other places, which is why what we were looking at doing is just making that explanation that we're not going out to try to stop anybody. If we see somebody walking into a private residence or a private business, that's not what we do. It is, we are trained in Article 7, which is dog law, and myself, Article 26, given my status. Now, with that Article 7, Monroe County Sheriff's deputies are not trained in that. So they defer to us. Anytime an animal job comes in, they're going to call us, whatever the animal job is. If we need their assistance, we ask them to hang out in case something goes sideways. But they have to rely on us as well. One of the things that Carrie had brought up that with that concern, I just wanted to kind of, if that was a question that anybody had, I wanted to say, be a little bit more specific, that we're not hunting people down. We don't do that. It's only in response to a dispatch. However, if this is a item that is a sticking point, which is why we also added that if it's posted, for service dogs, or if the business allows it, like K2 Brewing allows it, there's several other breweries, some of the restaurants that have outside dining allow it, Lowe's, Home Depot, Tractor Supply, those places allow dogs inside. It is posted. Okay, that's fine. We're not going to stop any of that. If this becomes such a sticking point that it needs to be removed, there could be other concerns, like who are they going to call? Because the deputies are going to still call us anyway.
Yep. Yep, so Steve, if I can jump in here. So part of my concerns, and I had talked with Jeff a little bit about this also, before these revisions, right? What I was hoping to see if the public had an issue with was, I understand that that's the current practice, but it wasn't reflected that way in the language. And my concern was, for private enterprises, I didn't think the supervisor had any jurisdiction over service animals, whatever, at private enterprises. But I see now that the red line that you've worked with staff, so I appreciate that. I understand that public buildings is going to be further clarified as town-owned public buildings, and that restaurants, stores, or cemeteries, I know cemeteries, there's another municipal code on that.
We removed that.
I understand. So thank you for doing that, Jeff, and understanding, the concern there. And for commercial establishments, again, clarifying in I, which I see the new language proposed, that we are really deferring to them. If they have notice posted, it's really their prerogative, whatever they want to do there, unless called by legal authority. So I understand that, and it's going to be working together at their request, right? They're going to be calling emergency services, and then you respond. Yep.
They are either going to contact us directly, or they're going to contact 911, because they may not think of it, and then 911's going to dispatch us
I get it.
anyway.
So I am okay with personally okay with the revisions for H and I, and I think Linda had brought up the word disposed of. I understand also what that means legally, but the connotation that it just sounds like we're going to be putting the dogs down, which I don't think the town wants to be in that business. So I understand, Jeff, you again worked with them to change it to the disposition. So Linda, it would reflect
Right,
final
that did-
court
we did see that,
disposition.
correct.
So I think those were the only three sticking points for me. I don't have any other concerns. Do you guys?
Can I ask a question? So you said that the cemetery provision was removed, but I don't see a deletion in this version. So I don't know if that,
It was an H. You're not seeing the red line. So after enter public
okay,
buildings.
okay,
yeah.
so
Yep.
it's got the version that because the
The
way,
law, it's got to
have the strikeouts and,
I'll fix that,
Okay,
because I think it got lost in
Yep.
like a track changes
Yep.
situation, but yes.
There's three versions in our drop, so you might.
so, all right, so but
I will pull,
the final version has to have the strike through because
Yes,
it's an
To show the
amendment.
changes. Yep.
yes, I will correct that.
Right. And the dispose of, Carrie worked on that, and I know that was before we had the public hearing that was changed. So even our public hearing
Yeah,
addressed it without it,
And
I
honestly,
believe.
even with the public hearing, so in talking with Pete, these minor wordsmithing
Which is- yeah.
changes wouldn't be deemed substantive. It's only when you make a substantive change.
Right, I just
to-
wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was our,
Yes.
so when people came up and they didn't,
Passionate on that one, Linda.
very passionate.
So you still have to have it on your desks for the
Yes.
minimum number
Yep,
of days.
yep, yep.
We don't need to do another
Okay.
public hearing.
Yeah, so we'll circulate final version before this Friday, and then it'll be on your agenda for the April legislative session to adopt the local law. And it will be.
So with that,
Oh, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion for a resolution to be prepared to adopt amendment to Chapter 90.
I'll second.
Vote, please.
Barry.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Leonhouse.
Aye.
Techlish.
Aye.
All aye.
Now you
Apologies.
can do
I apologize.
everything that you
I
just said. you
apologize.
did.
I'm so sorry. I jumped the
It's fine.
gun.
It's
I jumped the
good.
gun.
It's
Sorry.
fine. Great. Thank you for working with us, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure, but I'm sure there might be changes coming up. Just so you know, I've been actually reading through it, and we've had two cases that went before a judge that he basically said, I don't even want to hear it. I agree, and it's essentially for cases involving threatened or perceived threatened aggression. Because when that law was originally put in, invisible fence really wasn't a thing at the time. So when dogs are doing what they do, which is bark, charging a line, now the invisible fence, people, if the dog comes out barking, dog's doing what he's supposed to do. Invisible fence wasn't a thing. So that was kind of if the dog is out on a leash, or not on a leash, rather, runs up and barks, and even though it doesn't make physical contact, but threatens or has a perceived threat, then I could take that person to court on that charge. That's that's how it's being utilized. It's being utilized when people are walking and a dog comes running up and stops at the edge of the property on the invisible fence, and they're like, well, the law says it's a threatened or perceived a threat, and I perceive that as a threat. So it's a very subjective thing that I think tabling for another time to maybe discuss it and look into that a little bit deeper based on information that we have now that invisible fence and invisible fence type satellite fencing is now a new thing, that is something that we should maybe address because it's also being weaponized. Neighbor v. neighbor, they don't like each other. One neighbor's got a dog, invisible fencing. Now they weaponize the dog, and we're called out there multiple times.
For you, I think you should treat that like, it seems like the standard ought to be a reasonable person standard, not what this individual may perceive. You know what I mean? Like,
The reasonable person standard has not been established. That's the problem. Because based at that time when that law was put in, invisible fence really wasn't a thing. It was so expensive.
but as far as the way you are interpreting it today.
Correct.
Yeah, that's how you should.
But it's not up to my interpretation, it's up to the judge's interpretation.
But you get a little bit of prosecutorial discretion,
I
right?
do, but I have very little latitude depending on which judge I get in front of. So whether we word it differently or just change the language in it, because that seems to be kind of the thing that would help move things along. I think maybe changing it or striking it. If there's a barrier of some sort, whether it be invisible or physical barrier, that has to be taken into consideration. So again, table that for a different time, but just kind of putting the bug in the air.
All right,
And-
we'll get this one done.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's what I said. We'll table this for another time, but thank you all very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And I'm sure you're all happy not to see me for a while.
Not true.
And it's that time of year for the ride-alongs. So anybody that's wanting.
I do want
I know,
to.
Linda, you want
Yep.
to. And Jeff, I know you wanted to. So at some point, we'll do it.
Absolutely. All right, boys, you should get out of here. Give you a chance to walk out, unless you want to hang with us. All right, last chance. All right, I'll move right on. Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you, Steve. Alex, thank you.
Thanks.
You too. All right, next action item is Clark Barn bid results. Carrie, can you lead the discussion?
I will be happy to
Please.
lead the discussion. As you know, the official bid opening, public bid opening was on Friday, March 14th at 11 a.m. 6 bids were received, and the lowest bidder, and this was all in your packets, you're going to see quite a range in terms of I'll remind for the group and anyone watching in the audience or at home, option A was selective demolition, preserving all of the viable timber frame structure, the superstructure, any structural elements to be dismantled in a way, labeled with the schematics so that it could be potentially reconstructed at a future, in its current footprint at a future time, using those structural members. Option B was if the selective demolition and exact deconstruction was not potentially viable, or we're not sure, that it would be reusable uniform sections of the viable timbers would be preserved for future reuse, essentially adaptive reuse type of an option. So rather than, again, option B was more of a catch-all for cost purposes, so that if the town board wanted options to consider in the future, that we wouldn't have to go back out to public bid. It does take several months to navigate from bid specification to the bid document, or the bid document to the bid date. Today, and following up to the low bids received, myself, the director of DPW, the deputy director of DPW, parks foreman, and town engineer had a phone conversation with Durable Demolition to understand their experience. They actually granted us permission if we wanted to reach out to the second highest bidder, or second lowest bidder, to gain whether or not they had more experience, and so we took them up on that offer. They said, we understand, we see the bid range, so we're doing more vetting right now. So I think my ask for tonight would be to give staff more time to reach out to the bidders to get more information. We're asking them to provide us with references, to provide past experience both at the municipal level, make sure they understand that this is prevailing wage work. They all acknowledge it is, and that they have the capacity to perform the services that were described in the bid document.
Have they done certified payroll before?
They have.
Okay.
Both firms, both the low bidder has. The low bidder indicated in their communication.
Is that prevailing wage? Is that what you mean?
Prevailing
Yeah.
wage.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they'd
so
have to do the certified
payroll in accordance with the Department of Labor's
Okay.
requirements. The low bidder indicated that they've done selective demolition of partial buildings, not an entire building. They had full confidence they could perform the work as described in the request for bids. And so we just want to have a few minutes, or not a few minutes, but we need some more time to evaluate, and we want to do reference checks. We've asked for references, and the bid document did provide that clause indicating that the town may seek, additional information from low bidder to just demonstrate that they are the lowest responsible bidder.
Because we want to make sure they've got demonstrated experience in the area that we're
Correct.
contracting for. Yep.
No, I agree. I think it's, a lot of time has gone by, but we've got to get this right. And based on that, I know there were some emails circulating. Have you looked to bring back in the Clark Bond Committee into any of this process so that they can review, so that they have some insight?
So I would leave that to the town board.
Okay.
At this point, it may be more of a technical review at this
Right,
point.
understood.
The other thing I will share with you is, I want to just be clear that the bid went out to the 4 recommended providers that our historic preservation expert that serves the committee had provided. In addition to that, I actually got contacted by somebody that specializes in timber reclamation. They found the RFP somewhere. Somebody had sent it to them. They saw it. Those folks did not submit a bid. And one of them I know for sure was one of the folks who went to a site visit. So that, I just want to share that
Okay.
just for information and context.
They may have concluded it's not feasible to do.
I don't know if they concluded it's not feasible. I don't know if they concluded that
Expense.
that the timber, so hard to know. I think,
They didn't indicate one way or the other.
they didn't, I mean, I can certainly reach out and maybe follow up. One of the providers actually emailed, we got some emails from folks saying, thank you for the bid, we're not going to be submitting.
Right.
And one of them was the folks that specialize in timber reclamation. So I can reach out for more information if you'd like me to.
I would be curious, but obviously, we had a deadline.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
we can't extend that, we can't make it, but I would just be curious as to, did they see something or,
Yeah, I'm happy to maybe get more information if you think that'd be helpful. Okay.
I think it would, but I'll leave that up to the board too.
Sure.
And Carrie, thanks for adding the additional information that, this work, along with the advisory committee, was in conjunction with the Landmark Society and Historical Preservation Committee. And I know with Megan, we took a lot of her recommendations for contractors that specialize in this, because this is not, like just handiwork, but it's highly particular, and that we are trying to consider the various options to carefully take down, potentially rebuild, or keep it usable, right? And I was personally surprised at how low these came back. I didn't have any frame of reference, but
Right.
I was concerned that they would be coming in the $1 million mark. But I think it would be helpful. It's got to come down. I still agree with that. but I think it would be helpful for the board at some point, probably we can save when Bob is available too, Jeff, because I think we just need to take a pulse check before we spend, even with the lowest amount, right? I'm not saying I would go there, but just take a pulse check of what do we want to do with it? Because this was a very atypical situation. Normally, we don't go out to bid. Normally, we don't expend any funds without an intended use for a property or intended use for the building before we construct. So this was very atypical because, again, understanding that it's a very old barn and having some like emotional acclamation towards it, right? We didn't just want to bulldoze it down. But before, again, just all of us as public fiduciaries, before we spend any sum of money, we just need to take a pulse check. What do we want to do with it? So I'm also in agreement, Carrie, to get more information. I'm okay with getting information from the bidders that didn't bid as well. And then I would ask the board to take that conversation at a later date.
All right, so I'll gather more information provided in advance of the next work session.
Because that discrepancy is quite, it's,
Yeah, I mean, I will say that,
I know.
yeah, so the discrepancy, obviously, sometimes that's a product of their own workload and how much money they're, sometimes that's a matter of what it might cost them or how many crew members they think they need, what equipment they need to utilize. I will share that in conversations with both the two lowest bidders, they described the exact same equipment, the exact same number of staff, the same time frame that would be needed, and so there's a lot of consistency. So I think, and I will share with you.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what about the storage of it? Did they?
So the storage was determined by town staff that it'd be better for us to be the decider of whether we're leasing or buying storage units.
gotcha.
So the bid form, if you asked for what's your price for option A, what's the waste hauling cost of option A, and then how many storage containers do you think you need? I will share with you, both providers that we spoke to just said we sort of took a shot in the dark of how many. You won't know that until you really are like removing and you see how much you have that's salvageable.
Right.
Because that's going to dictate. So there might be some need for us to be flexible on, okay, they're thinking it's going to be 5 storage containers. You might need 6, you might need 8. You might not know until you're
Right.
taking it down.
That's fair.
And
That's
so, and then the other decision, as part of this, separate from the bid, but a related conversation is going to be, and DPW, and we can get information from from providers, whether we're releasing the storage units or we're purchasing them. So that's another conversation.
Right.
So we'll have more of that information for you at the next,
Okay,
at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Lots to
Thank
think
you, though.
about.
Thank you for everything on this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I think you said it, but one of the factors will be like how much timber is really salvageable or that it's not already rotted, right? And we
Yes,
won't know that until we get
And
into it,
actually,
right?
until you're starting to dismantle, and depending on whether you option A or option B. Option A is that these are posts that are joined together with, sort of a post and a wooden post being connected by other wood, like a wood. I'm looking to Bob. What was the frame? The word?
It's peg and post.
Peg and post. Thank you.
Ah.
So it's wooden pegs. So the challenge of like, do they really come apart? Can they become?
Without major,
Yeah, or do they need to be saw cut anyway, and then they're rejoined later with brackets, to rejoin the joints. So those are the kind of things. And
We
then,
have a whole pool going on.
I know.
It's a
And then-
betting pool of what comes apart easily, what doesn't.
Right,
Wow.
well, and then there will be some need, and we'll talk more. We'll gather as much information as we can so you can all make an informed decision.
Okay. Carrie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so next action item is 47 Willow Pond Way. I have a few comments before we begin, so I'll fly through these. Before we discuss the proposed development at 47 Willow Pond Way this evening, I'd like to make a few comments. Over the past 5 months, we have thoroughly examined this proposal. I have read countless emails, listened to numerous residents, and engaged in many discussions, some extensive. This past weekend, I was out there walking the neighborhood, which was beautiful. Residents were out. Talked to a couple residents. And I appreciate the thoughtful input we've received. It has allowed me to further reflect on the proposal, particularly the concerns about density that I want to focus on. This development should not exceed the density of other multifamily residential neighborhoods in Penfield, including Willow Pond itself. I had another conversation with Bob Ockenden this morning, who wished he could be here but couldn't make it. He's traveling this afternoon, I think through the weekend. So I spoke with Bob this morning after discussing all these concerns. We agreed that the proposed project seems to be too dense for this particular location. When a development borders single-family homes, we must be careful to consider the impact of the existing community. As town supervisor, I'm committed to ensuring a fair and transparent process for those seeking to invest in Penfield. And we welcome businesses as they contribute to our community and certainly our tax base. I mean, we need the commercial. The town must balance growth with responsible planning that aligns with our town's character and priorities. Regardless of the outcome of this project, I want the residents of Willow Pond to know that traffic calming remains a priority. This has been an ongoing discussion that started for me, I think, at the beginning of last summer with the Transportation Committee and prior to knowing about the project on Willow Pond. I'll continue to work with the Sheriff's Department to explore traffic calming solutions, to do everything we can to mitigate concerns in the meantime. This has been a lengthy and deliberative process, and I'm glad we didn't make a hasty decision. I think Linda said, regarding the barn, that may have taken a long time to get to a conclusion, but we'll get to the right conclusion. I just want to extend my thanks to town staff. They really worked hard on this project, as all projects. They've been inundated with questions, a lot of email, a lot of concerns, and I appreciate them, the town staff always, all the work they've been doing. With all that in mind, I'd like to make a motion for our town attorney or staff to draft a resolution denying this project specifically based on density requirements. And before I open it up, I just want to ask a question for Peter, probably Carrie. I know the town code references the density requirements. Would you just remind us the density requirements for a multi-residential
Yeah,
as opposed to, I guess, a PUD?
I'm going to pull up the code, I want to make sure I'm not quoting it off of the top of my head. I believe that in multi-family, multi-residential, that it requires 3,500 square feet per unit, I believe. I'm going to double check that as we're chatting here. And under that requirement, for a property of this size, I believe the unit count would be, the max unit count would be 56, 55, or 56. I can do that math.
Hey, remind me what's proposed, I'm sorry.
And then proposed was 88 units.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, Kevin, I can talk, go ahead.
No, you made the motion?
Yes.
And okay, we will discuss after it's
Okay.
seconded then, right?
Yes, thank you. Do I have a second?
Can you remind me, what is the motion for staff to prepare?
To deny,
The special use permit?
yeah, special use permit, specifically based on density.
Okay, I will second your motion, but I would like an opportunity to discuss.
Sure.
I mean, there might be other things beyond density that would be, which, that I think other people might want to add to support that. And
Sure.
I know Member Taglish has submitted some information, And I think staff and I can work on preparing a resolution that incorporates the things that we believe have support in the record.
Yeah.
If that's, I suspect that's,
Carrie, I don't know if you're aware, but Councilwoman Teglish actually drafted a detailed and persuasive resolution. Thank you very much regarding this, and that could probably be used as a pretty good basis for what you're doing.
I'd be happy to take a look at that and work with with Peter on.
I've looked at that, and I communicated with Ms. Taglish about some of the concerns I had with some of the information. There's, so there needs to be some
Right.
reworking of some of that.
Peter provided some very good feedback to it. It is a lengthy document. Kevin and I were concerned. I spent a lot of time looking into this, talking to residents, reading comp plan, reading code. A lot of time went into this, and I am very pleased that you read it, must have read it this morning, and came up with a declaration that you agree. So we're thrilled about that. We do need work on it, understanding it needs some work, but I think there is enough there to support a denial resolution.
I mean, my concern with this type of thing is to make sure that we have a good resolution, no matter which way the board was going to go, that, in the event of any litigation, that we can support that with findings supported by evidence in the record. So in a situation like this, I think it's important to have that resolution before the ledge session.
And just to clarify, it's not a big deal. I saw your email. I didn't get a chance to read the resolution that I got this afternoon, but
Okay.
yeah.
So I provided the second to get at least the
Okay.
resolution up for discussion. So I'm glad to hear everyone's feedback. I think my immediate concerns, right? Because I didn't really know everything that you were just about to say,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I mean, we haven't
I'm very much
talked
like in a
about this.
reaction
Yeah, no,
mode.
no.
So I need some time to kind of digest everything. And Linda, I did see your email and the proposed resolution as well. But typically we direct the staff to prepare the resolution. So I would not be in favor of adopting your version. I think
That
there
was
has to
not
be-
an expectation.
Okay,
The
so-
idea is to draft something, what our beliefs were, what our understanding, and then obviously turn it over to staff and our
Okay,
attorney.
because and I'm glad you two had a conversation. We didn't have a chance to talk earlier today, and I think, you sent that around noon, so I didn't have a chance to read it in full, but I think just scrolling through it, there were some things that concerned me, and I'm sure you guys talked about that as well. So I think my immediate concern, however, is this was the resolution to approve the special use permit was tabled at the last legislative session because the applicant submitted that request, which we then granted. So and again, just reacting, I don't know if I'm comfortable with it procedurally, right? We did also have a request from Preserve Penfield to also table it to a much later date because they had submitted FOIL requests. So I'm just saying my personality, I like to make decision based on facts in the record.
Sure.
And for the last 3 work sessions, while the applicant was here, we didn't really pose a lot of questions on density. It was focused primarily on the engineering report, the traffic report, and more related to that. So that's my only hesitation procedurally. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with this, but regardless, I provided that second to have that opportunity. Otherwise, your motion would have just died on the floor. So thank you for everyone for giving your thoughts. And then, I mean, Jeff, I don't know how, I don't know I guess you're going to be working on what the resolution says. I mean, I don't really know yet what I'm voting for, really.
So
Well, I guess the
Based
motion
on-
on the floor probably would need to be amended to include, to make it more general than just so specific, to kind of get that staff to start preparing a resolution to deny the special use permit.
And if staff is going to do it, I would say that it could be circulated in advance so that you have the opportunity to provide feedback to
yeah.
Peter.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that Peter would ultimately identify to, coordinate with us,
Yeah, we'd work together to,
finalize a
Yeah.
version that had
Now-
included.
yeah. Now, the applicant requested it to be tabled, but I don't know what the purpose of the tabling was, if they're looking for more information. The Preserve Penfield folks made a request based on, they were looking for some additional information from another.
Yeah, they had made a FOIL request to the school district for information regarding training of bus drivers and incidents at the S-curve, and they were told that that would not be available until after April 15th.
So I just noted that. I don't know that I noted that in case the FOIL records came back with nothing, right, aside from training, no records of incidents in the last 50 years, I still don't think it would appease their concerns, right? Or if it came back with more, then I don't know that the town board really wants to step into the shoes of trying to evaluate accident reconstruction, right, to understand what happened 50 years ago. Or so I had a lot of reservations on that, but of course would have, if the evidence came in, of course would have reviewed it, right? Kept an open mind to review it. Yeah, so thank you for clarifying, but Pete, that's what the request was for. So again, procedurally, those are my concerns.
Did we ask earlier on in the process for information from the sheriff's office? I mean, would that information, accident information, for example, would that already exist in our files?
That would have been evaluated as part of the traffic impact
Yeah,
study.
okay.
I believe that was
Okay.
already captured. I can verify that.
Yeah, why don't we just verify that to make sure that information was something that would have been sought as part of the traffic study process, either Passero or Bartlett Judas,
Yeah.
so that we, make sure we know what information may exist and whether or not we requested it and would have it if it existed.
Okay.
Okay, what else? Do we vote at this point to move
I
things
guess,
forward?
do you want to amend your motion to be, ask staff to prepare a denial resolution for the special use permit based on density and other relevant factors that was identified by Ms. Taglish? That's something that would be, and then,
Based on your input and staff's input, right?
yes.
Yeah, obviously.
Sure. Okay. So I don't know how to say all that, but,
Just say,
so I will amend.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, so moved, that's perfect. What Pete said, what Pete's having.
And you're
Is there a second
you're okay
still,
with
or-
the second?
Yeah, I'm okay with the second, sure.
Okay, and vote?
Yeah, ready? Vote.
Barry?
Aye.
Lee?
No.
Leonhouse?
Aye.
Teglish?
Aye.
Okay. So you have one informational item
you sent that to staff?
that I want to share.
Oh,
Is
okay.
it okay?
Yeah.
So this is on Kennedy Road, specifically 1775 Kennedy Road. I want to provide a little bit of an update. In partnership with Monroe County, we've been reviewing draft language for conservation easement at 1775 Kennedy Road. Both the county and town attorneys are nearing the final stages of this review. This will be it'll be great for the community and all the neighbors of East Penfield and importantly Kennedy Road. And I remember the worry about this land being developed a year ago came up and certainly didn't forget about it. And I just want to thank Adam Bell and the county executive for his continued support and great partnership, and specifically legislator Paul Don Dorfer, who's trying to push this over the finish line. I know he's been working with the county on this, so I want to thank him. I'll have more information to come in the future, but hopefully this will happen soon.
Yeah, so I can
yeah,
comment on that
please,
also.
please.
So I've been working with the county attorney's office to kind of put a draft together. I've given the latest version to staff for comment, and I anticipate once that passes muster at staff, we'd have a copy available for the town board to start reviewing. That this is probably going to, it's been going on for a while, but it's going to seem to come right to a quick conclusion because the county, I think, is looking to move this,
Legislatively.
yeah, either maybe in April or May, I don't remember, they told me.
Their
but-
process takes a little bit longer, I think, even from it going to committee to.
Okay.
So I'm anticipating that we'll have this as a work session item at next month's meeting for the draft easement and agreement
Yeah.
to be available for the town board to review.
So the idea would be that the county would grant the town a conservation easement for, I think right now it's for a period of time. I don't remember the 40 years maybe. And then that would restrict development on that parcel.
And it would still remain county land?
Yes.
Yes.
It's county land.
We don't want
yeah,
the
We're not
land.
purchasing
No,
it.
I know.
We would not want to purchase that.
No.
That's great news, Jeff. You should have read that with a lot more emotion. I mean, honestly, like, and I did have a chance also to try to connect with legislator Don Dorfer, who's really been doing his part to help Penfield, and I know we've got Kennedy residents here as well, but this is, thank you, Pete, and thank you, Jeff, and Carrie, and everyone that's been working on this for months in the background. I mean, I think it's one example where, like, and Linda and Kevin, you had just joined the board at that time, right? And it was like a project that could have just steamrolled right through if it weren't for the additional due diligence and your input, and Jeff, you taking an opportunity to press pause as well. And we didn't obviously implement brush drop off there, but then to take the additional step forward and keep it moving and really work towards the conservation easement to kind of protect that area from
Yeah.
future development. And it shows all of our town's commitment to not build on what pre-existed as a landfill, right, for that neighborhood. I mean, I don't know if you want to reread it with, again, more
I wish I had
like,
my glasses on, like trying,
You
so
know,
that's part of it, but
but
yeah,
I think
mean,
it has to be like really clear, like what Pete, you just said. It's a conservation easement. We're working towards 40 years to
think it's
protect that.
40 years, I don't remember.
All right, 40 years pending attorney review.
Yep.
But it shows the cooperation and partnership between the county and the town for a really great result. So that's great. Great job,
I think the
everyone.
county recognizes too that,
Right.
that's why they're willing to give the easement as kind of a, hey, we'll give you, the keys to say that, oh, we can't do anything with it, so.
Yeah. And kudos to what you said, Candace, and I also have to call out our residents, our community. The
Yeah.
Kennedy Road residents came together, and they were angry, and rightfully so. But they also were organized. They came to us. They sought insight. They sought our help. And, I love it when community speaks up. I love it when residents speak up, because this is what it's all about, is being able to honor and respect what they live every day. So,
We'll speak
Good
up,
job.
but work together as well,
100%.
right? So, I mean, thank you
100%.
both, and thank you, everyone there. Thanks, Linda.
yeah.
awesome. Okay. Anything I'm missing?
Your glasses.
I'm going to start leaving readers up there for you.
Okay.
That was great news. Thanks, Jeff.
So we'll now adjourn this meeting. Our next work session is April 23rd, 2025, and it is 7:34, almost under an hour. How about that? Thank you, everybody.